All right, check, check. We're live. All right, welcome to another episode of Legal AI Live. Smaller panel today, which it will be a little bit of a good thing. We're hoping for more diversity next month, but we've had like 2 or 3 shows in a row with 8 and 9 panelists, and it's just kind of crazy. And there's so much that has happened. So really excited to dive into some of that stuff. And that's on me for being 2 minutes late because it's my fault for doing back-to-back live streams. I apologize to my LinkedIn audience. But we've got a great panel here today. Let's just quickly go around and around the horn, let people know who you are, where you're at, and just like one quick cool thing that you've tried in the last month with AI. We'll start with Davian.
Damien Real, day job is with Clio, where I build things and talk about the stuff that we build. And I've been vibe coding like crazy, man. Opus 4.6 is a monster, so we can talk about that.
All right, next up is Greg.
Greg Kochansky, Vice President of Thought Leadership at the American Arbitration Association, where I help run our ICDR Institute, which is focused on topics like AI in alternative dispute resolution and access to justice.
All right, and Nick.
Nick Rishwain. I'm Vice President of Business Development at Experts.com, founder of Cougar DAO LLC, a variety of, I've got my hands in lots of things. And I have also been vibe coding after our chat last week. I dug deeper and got some guidance, and I've been vibe coding. So it's been a good time.
All right, and I'm Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney and CEO of Practi. And over the last month, I finally built out a forward-facing notebook using the consumer version of a Google AI subscription account that is a curated resource of all of my knowledge as the subscription attorney. It's notebook.practi.ai. Go check it out. All right. So with that, we're coming off of Legal Week, and not to steal Bob Ambrosi's upcoming thunder in an hour, but he's got a different panel. Unless Damien's going to be on there too, because I know Damien. Have you ever been on that? I think you have.
I've attended, but never as a panelist. But no,
Okay.
Yours is way better than Bob Ambrosi.
All right. So we're not like that caliber of legal journalist here. But Damien and Greg, you were both at Legal Week.
Yeah,
that's right.
Nick, did you make it?
No, it's too far, and it's not our ideal audience.
Yeah. Okay, so I didn't make it either. So Greg, starting with you, and then we'll go to Damien. What are some like really great AI takeaways?
Well, I think that overall, I felt that there was a sense of optimism and willingness to experiment. Lawyers are thought of as being very risk averse, and of course we are, but I think there was a willingness to be open to experimenting with things. And there was a lot of talk of managing risk and AI governance and, building frameworks and safety nets to make it more comfortable to try new things with AI.
And what was your takeaway from it, Damien?
I would say that, we've reached levels of maturity, like you think 2023, that deer in headlights, 2024, that we've said, okay, what are we going to do about it? 2025 started building. This year, there was more maturity, I think, in that Nikki Shaver's list of legal tech companies, I think, is now up to 1,000. It was just 750 just a month and a half or 2 months ago. So yeah, it's remarkable how many more AI companies, and I can only attribute that to vibe coding, right? But there's so many. It's now easier than ever to build a legal tech company. So every lawyer and their brother and sister-in-law are building a thing, and I wonder how many of those are going to have legs in a year. But yeah, out in force with the massive amounts of people in the exhibit hall, and yeah, I didn't attend a single session, so I can't say how the sessions are, but the conversations in the hallways were quite fun.
Yeah. All right. So you brought up vibe coding. So we'll go back there because Nick is experimenting with some vibe coding. And I've vibe coded. Okay. I've vibe coded some simple apps. And now with like Perplexity Computer, I think that's going to be even easier for me to do because it's like you could just build apps there and like deploy them. And I have some spreadsheets that I've been keeping track of stuff of like just in my personal life forever. And so I'm thinking, okay, I might be able to finally vibe code some apps that actually work and are useful that I could deploy just for myself, right? Not necessarily sell. But when I vibe coded in the past and I used V0, it shows you all the code. Now, when I vibe a legal contract, right, like I could look at that and I look at the words and I understand it and I know what it got right and it got wrong, but I don't for the code. So Nick, starting with you, do you have a technical background and like you've been vibe coding? Like how comfortable are you feeling even though maybe you're not, a coder?
Yeah, so I have what you would call basic technical background. Like I I know what HTML says, right? And I know when there's a tag missing, and so I know some basics that, because we'll have to edit stuff on our site that's visible to the public. And so I'll go in and I'll do that. And so I'm comfortable with databases, at least relational databases, and I'm comfortable with some code. And I was dangerous with Solidity for a few weeks, and things like that. So I will bang on a keyboard, and I can do some stuff, but basic technical, not technical as many founders are. So vibe coding, first of all, it was an eye-opening experience. So after last time, and we had talked about the agents, and I was really interested in, I was like, God, I know I need to do this. I know I'm behind the times, and I like to be an early adopter, but I had sort of got stuck in the rut with AI, the chat. So I reached out to our friend Daza Greenwood. I said, Daza, I just need some guidance. Like, give me somewhere to start. And so he walked me through some instructions, which I found out as well, like, hey, Claude will do this for you as well. So he just gave me a couple of items to go and do, and I did it. And I installed Claude Code on the computer, and then I had it make a reservation for me through OpenTable, and I was like, okay, this is fun, right? The light's going on. I'm sending it out to do stuff for me. Had it draft some content for our site, and then we've been upgrading our website, our platform for a while to Postgres from SQL. And so, but we've had trouble with some of what we've been getting. So we had been doing several of these things, and we weren't happy with what we were getting back from a contractor. And so we started using Cloud Code to kind of go over the information that they were sharing, and using it to improve what we were doing or what they were doing. And so it's been really great, because now I can see what they're doing, and I can then compare their code I can run it through Cloud Code. Myself being non-technical, our CEO is the technical person, and so I get to go over this and go, well, I'm getting this error, and I can troubleshoot some of those errors earlier on, and it makes me a much better general contractor, if you will, for lack of a better, because I can go back and say, all right, well, we need this, or my CEO can take it back to our programmers and go, all right, this isn't working, and I think this is why. So it cuts down on our communication quite a bit. And anyway, and then I went out and sent this information to a buddy of mine who's now developed a whole new website for his tax accounting software, and stuff that he, once I told him, like, the light went on and told him where to go and what to do, he's like, oh, he spent like 10 hours one day creating his whole, database, and Cloud Code walked him through the whole thing. So
I guess if I'm Squarespace or Wix, I'll be shaking in my boots, is what I'm hearing from him.
Yes,
right?
yeah. And interestingly, my buddy was on Wix, and there were problems with that. And Claude told him about that, some of the issues that you'd have. So he went over to Netlify and created Supabase for his database, and up and running.
So I want to go to Damien next, but Damien, I also want you to tell us what you've been vibe coding and doing to the extent that you can. Any do special drops about Clio stuff? No. But then also, like I was kind of joking about Wix and Squarespace. I think there's some truth to that. But like, what percentage of users are actually going to go and vibe code, right? So yes, they might lose 10%, right? But I'm curious to know your perspective on that, and then tell us what you've been vibe coding.
Yeah, so I think that, this is kind of like the days of HTML back in 1999, because I knew HTML. It seems like maybe Nick and maybe others did. And so I could be able to create an HTML page, pretty easily, but there's a technical hump to get through, to get over, to be able to do that. So, you think about how big that technical hump is, a spectrum. And so I would say that right now we're in the middle of the spectrum on vibe coding, but to go from, boy, it's impossible to build code, to in the middle of the hump where we are now, that was December to just March. Right. So, I mean, that's in 3 months, we went to, holy cow, Nick and I, with just a little bit of HTML knowledge, otherwise we're just, the worst coders on the planet, all of a sudden can vibe code quite easily. So I would say that between March and June, or March and September, Is it going to be that I could go to a Wix competitor that I just say, hey, I want a website that does my dog sitting service in Nowheresville, Podunk, and just speak it. And then the service will take care of the vibe coding to make it into existence. So I think that the humps are going to get smaller and smaller between, the normies, and really the interface now isn't it isn't a user interface. It's literally can be voice. And so I think the barriers to entry that used to be are no longer. And I think that's going to be the case for all sorts of software. I heard a leader of a big organization say that software as a service is going to die. Wix is software as a service, right? So software as a service is going to die. After that, software period, and after that, legal work.
But you work at a software company, Damien.
Right. I work at a SaaS legal software company that sells to lawyers, right? So anyway, I think of AI kind of like a tsunami that each of us can run in front of for a while, but eventually it's just going to crash over everybody. And the question is, how long is it going to take the four of us on this meeting? How fast and how far can we run? And can we run faster and farther than everybody else? Kind of like you don't have to run faster than the bear. You just have to run faster than the guy next to you that gets caught by the bear. So I think of it, so Wix probably going to be dead. And the real question is how soon, how much cheaper are they going to make their services to compete against the also-rans that are going to do it much cheaper than they already have?
All right, so this is called Legal AI Live. So I'm going to analogize that to law firms and people these AI tools getting better, and just consumers of legal services who, aren't hiring lawyers on billable hours anyways, the majority of the market, but especially the sophisticated ones, the in-house counsel, who are hiring outside counsel. Like, if you could just vibe all this stuff in-house, then how do you survive? And so I really think that, Wix can cannibalize itself, right? And become a vibe, it could lean into the vibe coding, right? It could empower people to do it themselves, and it could provide something that a lot of people don't have: taste, right? And so I think there's a legal spin to that where we, the law firms, need to be able to do that. So what can Clio provide? Well, it could help us vibe code, I guess, and it could help provide the taste that we, the law, or the business savvy that we, the law firms, don't have, right? So I think, some of these software companies that cannibalize themselves will survive. And so Greg, we haven't heard from you. So do you have any, anything about on that?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of what I've been vibe coding, I built myself a time tracker. It's kind of like a multi-clock chess clock that I'm using just at work to see where my time's going. And then I've also been playing around with agents and setting them up with their own email accounts and, having them control that. And I guess I have a slightly different take on the whole vibe coding thing in the SaaS apocalypse. I'm not a computer scientist, but I'm a self-taught coder. I can write Python. I can write a website in HTML, CSS, all that stuff. And I found that knowledge to be extremely helpful in vibe coding for understanding the architecture of what's being built, asking the right questions in terms of how I want something set up, just setting up the file structure for a project, and then debugging stuff. And there were times when, I was setting up the MCP server to the email account, or I don't know if it was an MCP, but setting up the connections. And I really had to go in and manually fix some of the files because Claude was not really just doing it for me. And so all of this is to say that, yes, if you're building a website or some really simple low risk use case, I could see people who don't have a coding background, just spinning it up in Claude Code. But I think for anything higher risk or more complex, I'm skeptical that is really going to be the best solution for most people. And I also think that a lot of people just don't want to build their own software. And so maybe the way that this goes is that SaaS companies, any software development organization is going to have a long tail of tickets and enhancements and feature requests and stuff like that they just don't have the time or the capacity to build. And they can't customize tools granularly as they might want to for all different types of users and use cases. And vibe coding is going to free them up to be able to build some of this stuff much more easily to respond to, smaller amounts of client demand. And so I wonder if that ends up being more of the model. And, we just get better software and more customized software, but it's still being built by people who know what they're doing.
I think that's right. And if we extrapolate this out, you and I and everyone on this who's attending can go out and farm our own things. That is, we can have our garden. But the question is, how much do we go to stores to be able to get our sandwiches? right? So the really, what is the value in being able to farm versus maybe is my time better spent, on as a lawyer so that I can pay somebody else to be able to make my sandwiches. And so really there's a real question as to what the cost of those sandwiches are going to be.
Yeah.
Because Wix is, we'll say just, I don't know what their price is, but let's pretend they're $50 a month or something like that. So $50 a month, but then they get a competitor that essentially just, they can vibe code a competitor to Wix, but only charge $25, right? But then their competitor charges $10 and their competitor charges $5, right? So as the cost of developing Wix and its similarities goes lower, the cost of the sandwiches also gets lower. And so the real question is how soon before the cost of the goods and services just go pretty close to zero, and what kind of margins can we charge on those cost of goods and services? And this is what, when I was in the Vatican talking AI to all the folks at the Vatican, one of the guys, the singularity is near. You might have heard of Ray Kurzweil. One of his lieutenants was there, and he and I spent a Saturday swapping ideas. And he thinks, and a lot of people in the Valley think, and I think they're right, is that the cost of legal services is just going to shrink, for the same reason that Wix is probably going to shrink. And the cost of accounting services is going to shrink. So the cost of services across the economy is probably going to shrink. The cost of products, that is atoms, with robotics is probably going to shrink. So if the cost of goods and services goes down, that's going to have a massive deflationary impact on our society, where now things are just going to cost less. And then $1 in that world is going to seem like $1,000 or maybe $100, right? We can figure out what the deflation is going to be. But where are we then? Right? So if the cost of the sandwich is, a penny and each of us has $100, like, man, that's going to be a weird world if that's true.
I mean, Greg, Nick, should we just let this be the Damien show? Damien, you want to tell us some more stories about the Vatican? But no, look, I think that has, like, any sort of jump in technology, and right, like what's like the closest thing, like the industrial age, right? Like we're entering the AI age. I just think we're going to be doing jobs that, like, years ago, like, people would have been like, that's a job? Like, could you imagine saying I vibe code stuff, to somebody who's, like, working a farm, right? To stick with your analogy, like, they'd be like, well, what are you talking about? A screen and it glows and what?
That's right.
So like, I just feel like humans are going to human, and like, those concerns are, like, they're not actually going to manifest.
So as a litigator, I'm sorry, I interrupted somebody.
Go ahead, Damien. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nick, and then I'll follow you. Go ahead.
Yeah, Nick first.
I was just saying, I mentioned in our chat here that you're right, I think, Matthew. Like we'll do new jobs where we're just augmented, right, with all of our AI or our cloud codes. But there will be displacement. Like I don't want to, I feel like we paper over that a little bit, and I know. So my contention for the last 10 years that I've been in legal tech has been that we sort of sugarcoat things for attorneys a lot of the time. Like, don't worry, your job's safe. Don't worry, your job's you're going to be fine. Don't worry, you're going to be fine. And I think we have to tell them the truth that some parts of your job are not going to be fine, right? There's going to be job displacement but it's not just you. It's going to be most of us in society. Certain things that we're doing now, we're just not going to do anymore because there's no need. So I think that's one thing that we should start making clear to attorneys. Certainly big law firms are not looking as to how they can increase headcount if they can decrease it and still bill the same amount, right? So there's going to be early stage lawyers who are going to miss out on that. And I suspect we'll see pushback to the days when they would graduate and hang up a shingle. I think that's going to be a necessity for a lot of graduating law students. That's one thing. The other thing is when the light really goes on for you in this, as I was telling, you can see that yes, certain white collar jobs are not going to exist. Like my buddy, this is, and Greg, you were right. Like what he did, it was going to be in the deflationary concept as well that Damien talked about. What he's planning is just a $5 service, right? That he can sell to the people who buy his accounting software. Okay. It's like, just one additional thing. So he didn't need anything. He could vibe code what he was doing here, and it was gonna be sufficient for what it was. But he probably would have had to pay somebody else who builds sites for him $5,000 or something to do that, right? He didn't have to do that. So there is going to be this change, as Damien put it, deflationary change. If I don't have to spend that money because I can do it in 10 hours, that's a big deal. There's a lot of local businesses that do, this web development stuff. That was the whole thing. If you don't need that nearly as much, the price reduces, and that is going to displace workers.
And it used to be somebody's job to go in and plug in the Ethernet cable for the company
Correct.
that didn't know how to work the internet. So, look, jobs change, So,
Do.
this wouldn't be illegal AI Live if Damien didn't share a screen. I understand we have a show and tell moment from Damien.
It's true. So when let's do a little. So Sally is a legal data standard that's being used by Thomson Reuters, by LexisNexis, by iManage, NetDocuments, the biggest law firms in the world, and the biggest in-house counsel like those at Microsoft and Intel. So I led Sally for a bunch of years, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool to be able to input any judicial opinion or motion or contract or narrative, and just put a timekeeping narrative and be able to then say, okay, put that timekeeping into tag it up programmatically into Sally tags. And so I took this pipe dream, and over a weekend I built it, and that's what I'm showing you here. So here I'm displaying, I uploaded a Seventh Circuit opinion, and then what it did is it took and it tagged up that Seventh Circuit opinion to be able to say that James Taylor is a person and that Maria Gonzalez is the plaintiff appellant. Appellant is a Sally tag. Plaintiff is a Sally tag. And then I could tag up all of the things. Standard of review is a Sally tag, and excessive force claim is a Sally tag. And so now it takes every single thing in this judicial opinion and is able to say that excessive force claim is an unreasonable search and seizure claim and a governmental tort claim. Because now we could be able to see that this is an excessive force claim as an unreasonable search and seizure claim, which is a Fourth Amendment claim, so this is now this beautiful graph to be able to say, now I've tagged up all of the things in this Seventh Circuit case. And I've also tagged up all the things in this complaint as I go to the next. And by the way, there's a Ubuntu machine over here that I'm virtually in here. So here is a complaint. Here is a commercial lease agreement, a contract where I say tenant's proportional share of the building is 4.17%. So extracted that as the co-tenant share of profits and expenses and the percentage. So it's tagged up the entirety of the contract, also tagged up the entirety of any billing narratives, timekeeping. So now I've tagged up that I prepared a detailed memorandum analyzing evidence. So now you can imagine, what if you could be able to tag up every timekeeping and say, show me all the time I drafted a motion to dismiss for breach of contract in front of Judge Smith. We've now tagged up Judge Smith, breach of contract, Southern District of New York. And now I can output that as whatever I want. So if I want to be able to go, I want to export this as a JSON file or as an XML file or a CSV file. Now I'm going to ask you two questions. Question number one, how long would this have taken us to build what I've just shown you here 2 years ago?
I have the answer for that because I had to try to build a redaction engine using named entity recognition technology, so pre-generative AI a couple of years ago. It took forever and it was imperfect. And what you're showing here, this would allow generative AI to redact documents perfectly. It's just amazing.
Right. So it would have taken maybe, think of Thomson Reuters, LexisNexis, like a team of 25 people, 1+ years to be able to do this.
Just some random companies, not competitive to anything.
Right. Or Clio, for that matter, right? So really anybody. But I literally did this on a weekend.
Yeah.
And Folio is a nonprofit under 501c3 nonprofit. So on my weekend, I built this on a weekend, and I made it free and open source. And the reason I made it free and open source is because it only took me a weekend. Mm-hmm. I didn't pump $100,000, $200,000, $1 million into this thing. I did it as a fun thing over the weekend, and now everybody gets it for free. So now if you're building a friend of mine told me that he knows law firms that are paying $70,000 annually to a service to do this very thing. I've just evaporated the $70,000 down to zero. And so then my sandwich goes from $5 to a penny. And how is somebody going to compete for spending $70,000 here? So this is an example of how are the cost of goods and services just going to shrink, and how much money did I just evaporate by doing what I did?
I think this is the nerdiest and most technical we've ever gotten on the show so far. And,
and I almost went into, we haven't even discussed the the economics of what happens when we have rapid deflationary experience too, right? Like there's a whole that is a fascinating discussion to have, probably not for legal AI, but
So
I think we just hit our quota of we got so technical and legal right there. I think we can talk about whatever we want. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I guess maybe a countervailing force here is that there's a margin of kind of unrealized quality in work output. So, like, I used to be a securities litigator and I did cost no object litigation. The limiting factor wasn't what we were charging the clients, it was the number of hours in the day.
Yeah.
And we could have done even better work, but there was just a limit to what, we could do in the time that we had. And so with all of these tools and with all the time savings, there is an opportunity to just do way better work. And, I just wonder if that ends up being a part of the narrative here. And, just the quality of all of these outputs just gets better and better. And that's what people have to learn is what great looks like and then aspire to that.
Well,
I
go ahead, Nick,
no,
and then we'll come back to
I
Greg.
it's really a great question. I suspect nobody's there or comfortable with it yet. But if we're feeding the entire corpus of legal decisions and legal research and all that into AI, and it has the ability to read any and all fact patterns that we've ever created and issue spot everything, where do you think this will play in arbitration, or where do you think this will play in mediation if it can see what both sides have in front of it and it can reason them both to the best settlement? Like how does that, like, instead of we spent time going back and forth in filing our motions, I've already analyzed any and all motions that were involved here, and I've decided that the best settlement for both parties is this.
Ask AAA and
That's
Greg.
what I'm asking, Greg. This is for you, Greg.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there is a possibility of a world in which when you have a perfect crystal ball like the AI arbitrator that we're, developing and we've released,
Okay.
and then we're also going to be releasing a decision simulator, which allows people on the front end to, load in their case and see how it might turn out. But the way that I see this going, number one, is that, yeah, it becomes irrational to proceed to a hearing or trial if you know with 99% certainty what the outcome's going to be. You should just go to the bargaining table and hash it out. But
Right.
also, to my point about quality, so you could use this decision simulator instead of just submitting one brief into it, have AI write 100 different versions of a brief. Load each one of them up and see how the differences impact the outcome from the system. So that's a way that you could end up with like the perfect brief, for your case by just testing things out. And that takes a lot of time and it's a different kind of sort of meta task than actually writing the briefs themselves. But
Right.
it seems like even potentially higher value than just writing one brief and, hoping for the best.
That ends part one of this month's Legal AI Live. Make sure to subscribe to the Legal AI Live podcast at legalailive.com to catch part two. You could also subscribe to our new YouTube channel or on any podcast app, just search Legal AI Live, and follow the Legal AI Live page on LinkedIn. See you next episode.